So my name is Jackie Brady and I'm the Executive Director of Family and Relationship Services Australia. And following on from our conference that we held in May earlier this year, we really wanted to take an opportunity to highlight a number of the presentations that had been made throughout the program in partnership with First Nations, people working in our sector as part of our sector. And we're very grateful today to be able to share with you Dwayne and Tara's presentation from the conference. Before I get to that, importantly though, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which FRSA and I am situated, and that's the lands of the Ngunnawal people. And I also wish to acknowledge the lands throughout Australia and pay respects to the ancestors of this country and elders past and present. I acknowledge the waterways, the land, the sky, and all who inhabit this place, this country. And I acknowledge their ancestors and elders and recognise those who continue to protect and promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. I acknowledge the past and stand together with First Nations people in a true expression of reconciliation with hopes and aspirations for the future. So as I noted, today we're actually being joined by Tara Farmer and Dwayne Hayden from Centrecare Inc. in Perth. And we were very fortunate to have the two of them present at the conference on the topic of cultural supervision and safe yarning. You have the information in terms of Tara's and Dwayne's bios, so I'm not going to read those as they've been scripted for you. But I think maybe Dwayne and Tara, I'm assuming as part of your presentation, you may be telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do within your organisation and within your community as well. So I'm going to go off screen now and leave it to Dwayne and Tara to take us through their messaging. Dwayne and Tara, over to you both. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jackie. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. And as Jackie mentioned, welcome to Cultural Supervision and Safe Yarning. So my name is Dwayne Hayden, and I am one of the co-cultural leads here for Centrecare, as Jackie mentioned. And I'm glad Jackie didn't read out the bios because it makes me feel really old when I do hear, we've worked in the sector, justice, community services and community development for over 20 years. I've recently returned to Centrecare, and so I've been here for about a year. And Tara, I think she's been employed for about 5 years with Centrecare. Okay. Thank you, Jackie, as well for the lovely acknowledgement to country. And I would just like to continue on with ours. So Tara and myself would like to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the First Nation, as the first peoples and traditional custodians of this lands and waters. We would like to also pay our respects to all elders past, present and emerging, and extend this respect to our fellow Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that are joining us online today.
So just a bit about Centrecare. The organisation commenced in the 1940s. It's a Catholic organisation, not-for-profit. Currently, today, it provides more than 65 services across the counselling support, mediation training, and support for many families, housing as well, and we'll go through that. In 2023, both Dwayne and myself were fortunate enough to be employed as cultural leads within Centrecare to provide the support around cultural supervision. Just to give you a bit of a snapshot though, with Western Australia, we just wanted to show you how broad it is, a very big state. We just want to show that we do currently provide cultural supervision across Kalgoorlie, which covers Leonora up in the top sector. So lots of community, Aboriginal community in different country. And it goes to Esperance, Bunbury, and to the right of the screen, all of the metropolitan offices within the Perth region. Thanks, Dwayne.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tara. And also some of my Kalgoorlie staff have recently commenced journeys out to the Warburton, Jameson and Blackstone areas as part of their outreach as well, which is very close to the South Australia and Northern Territory and WA borders as well. So that's even further out. Okay, so the history of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander trauma. So looking at the different services and agencies that we are all working for and employed by, and also that attended the conference in May, we are very aware of, intergenerational trauma that we talk about. So across the world, and of course here in Australia, Indigenous peoples have experienced colonisation, oppression, cultural oppression, and forced assimilation as part of that, and absorbed into, whatever global economy that took over their country, which might have been England, Spain, those kind of European superpowers back in the day. And there was little or no regard for Indigenous people's well-being or autonomy and stuff like that. Unfortunately, a lot of the results today here are high rates of depression, mental health. We've also got substance use, violence, and that's, lateral violence, including within Aboriginal communities ourselves. And unfortunately, to the extreme of mental health is suicides, in particularly some of our young people. You may have heard on the news the last year that unfortunately there's been 2 deaths in custody of young people here in Western Australia. Now, hopefully you can see the lovely picture there on screen. So for those that haven't been, not from Perth, so the feathers represent the black and red cockatoos that we have here in Western Australia. And they were designed by an Aboriginal artist, Sandra Hill, and they were designed to represent as a bit of a memorial to our stolen generation here. And it stands in Wellington Square in East Perth, and the feathers represent the boys and girls that were taken away, and also that pain and loss that they experience. And it's all about, them bringing them home as well. So it's a memorial, bit of a tribute to them, which people can go and see and pay their respects as well.
So a bit about cultural supervision. What is it and why does it occur? The purpose of cultural supervision is to support staff to develop and embed culturally safe and responsive practices that are practical and respectful when working with First Nations peoples, so our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Cultural supervision enables a process of truth-telling, collaboration, development of awareness, and understanding through safe and respectful conversations that are held in a safe environment that is free of judgment or fear. And this occurs as an objective of developing a pathway to cultural competence, leading towards positive and successful outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, children, families and communities.
Thanks, Tara. And I was just expanding on that a little bit more. Aboriginal people, as we know, First Nations people, we are a minority of the population, making only 3% or about 3%. But unfortunately, a lot of the services that we do represent, we do have a high representation, and that includes, the justice system, both adults and youth, child protection, education, welfare, homelessness, health and mental health, and I suppose a bit of a increase lately in NDIS as well, I suppose you could say. So this section is all about who is currently receiving cultural supervision for different programs and services here in Centrecare. So at the moment, here in Whadjuk Country or in Boolaloo in Perth, so we've got some of our metropolitan-based programs. So we've got the Beyond Youth Service. So they work in the community, but they also work at Banksia Hill Detention Centre here in Perth, and then recently in the Unit 18 unit as well. We've also got our Centrecare Family Accommodation Services. So that's more kind of that transition from homelessness to hopefully to longer-term rental accommodations, whether it's private or through the Department of Housing as well. We've also got our Sky Children's Counselling programs, our Family Support Network, and our Stronger Together Intensive Family Support Services. So they both, one works with families coming out of Child Protection, Department of Child Protection's management, and the other one's just receiving support, so they don't go into that area as well. And then quite recently, you know, our Access Wellbeing Services, which includes our clinical supervisors, which is fantastic. Next box there, down in Kepakul, which is down in Esperance. So we've got our Indigenous Advancement Strategy. So that's a program designed to increase and improve better health services interaction for the local people from down that way. Down in Wadandi country, down in Bunbury. We've also got our Early Intervention and Family Support Services, which is similar to the FSN program. And we've also got our counselling team down there as well. And lastly, we've got our few teams in Kalgoorlie, up in Kalcrawler, which is our Family First team. So they do some of the things with the prisoners in Eastern Goldfields regional program, regional prison, sorry. We've also got our reintegration and parenting teams, and then also our men's behavioural change program as well.
So far, cultural supervision is occurring online via Teams, but with Dwayne being established in the metropolitan area, he's able to do face-to-face support for staff, and that's one-on-one support, individuals to the staff that I mentioned in those programs in the previous slide.
So for us, when we started in our roles, you know, in terms of cultural supervision, Tara and I were like, all right, what does this look like? What do we want out of this? So hence that title, you know, that yarning space. So for us, as Tara mentioned, it's one-on-one with a staff member, and either Tara and myself as the supervisors. So we've separated into two different sections. We've got our supervisor, and so these are some of the qualities that agencies, if they're looking to start their own cultural supervision process, some of the qualities that supervisors would be recommended to have. So firstly, we've obviously got our cultural identity. So part of that could be, you know, using that government definition of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people. You know, you are of descent, First Nations descent, you identify and you're accepted by your community where you live as well. You got your cultural expertise. So this is that more when we're talking about, you know, your lived experience, your first-hand experience, where it's not necessarily you need your, say, a PhD in, you know, cultural studies or anything like that, but more, you know, if you've got your very good knowledge of our history, of the local peoples, you know, where the different programs, especially here in Western Australia where we work, and also a knowledge and understanding of different services in the community that is around there, which also just helps develop our staff's learning, development and understanding of what's out there as well, which they might not have been before. And next point there is resilience. So when we're talking about resilience, this is more about being aware of any potential triggers for ourselves, but then also for our supervisees, of course, as well, and you know how we can manage that within ourselves, because sometimes we do have tricky conversations, we shall say, you know, where people may not be aware of what they're saying and what that may come across as if they're doing that with clients in particular as well. Ethical cultural practices. So part of that is, you know, where we might have heard that walking in two worlds space, because both Tara and myself, yep, we're Aboriginal, we're Noongar people, you know, First Nations people, but then we're also in this service, in these roles as professionals as well. Part of that is, for example, for me personally, unfortunately, I've got a cousin brother's funeral today, but this has been booked in for a while. So I'm here for the presentation, but once presentation's done, I am leaving to go to his funeral, unfortunately. Yeah.
Also in that yarning space, we do have a bit of what we look for in a supervisee, and we will guide them along what that looks like. So in that space, the supervisee will require participation. So Centrecare as an organisation has embedded the participation of the supervisee into supervision policy, and it's mandatory for their attendance. We would also expect that the supervisee will have a bit of integrity and respect to engage in that process and learning and in conversation. Also in that space, it also goes for a bit of self-reflection, what that looks like, have the ability to reflect on your own actions, whether it's on a professional or personal capacity, but we want to support you in that space as well through the conversations. In this space, we would like to also provide supervisees have a bit of that self-awareness, and do they hold any cultural humility, or can we support them to create that? So we want them to come with a bit of an open mind as well. So as for supervisors and supervisees, we have flexibility in that yarning space for both. And that could be around obviously knowing other, such as what Dwayne mentioned with the ethical practice, the cultural practice. If you've got other obligations, we appreciate staff do have families and individuals they work with. So we want to provide that flexibility to support, whether it's changing calendar diaries or just holding time for them, then we have that availability to do that. Both supervisee and supervisor will hopefully have that empathy and understanding and an openness to discuss, difficult conversations that can be quite challenging.
Thanks, Tara. One thing I did forget to mention, apologies, about ethical practice, is also potentially the conflict of interest stuff for us, because potentially come across family or people that we do know in our services and stuff like that. So just being aware that we would need to disclose the potential conflict of interest.
And just also on that, Dwayne, too, sorry, I was just having a look at my little cheat list note. In the space that Dwayne and I hold as both male and female cultural leads, it's very important to recognise that it's not my business to talk about men's business. So that would be something Dwayne can support staff in, but predominantly I would expect it to be male staff, especially in the Goldfields region where they still hold cultural law practices. And then when it comes to women's business, then I'm happy to support in that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tara.
Thanks, Dwayne. Yep. So outcomes in the yarning space. Potential outcomes we would like to see is for all staff and individuals, the families that we support, are afforded provision of truth-telling. Alongside that, another outcome would be build respect for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, respect their customs and traditions and practices. Another outcome is to have active participation from the supervisee, hopefully to increase the cultural competence. And in turn, this will improve culturally safe and responsive work practices. Increase service engagement with successful outcomes, as well as holding accountability. And what we all hope to achieve is the improved social and emotional wellbeing of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and families.
Yeah, thanks, Tara. So just expanding on from that social and emotional wellbeing that Tara had mentioned in that last point, we use this social and emotional wellbeing tool to help explain to our supervisees, at our very early sessions, but sometimes continue if needed, what this means for our First Nations people. So the way that I best explain it is, in the middle there, we've got each individual First Nations client that comes to us, that is one of our referrals or in our programs and services. And around the outside there, we've got the 7 different areas which are very important to First Nations peoples. So we've got connections to body, connection to minds and emotions, connections to family and kinship, connections to community, connections to culture, connection to country, and lastly is connection to spirituality and ancestors. And I suppose the way that I like to explain it as well is, unfortunately for some of our, or majority of our clients, they've either got one or more of those spaces missing. And unfortunately, that's why they're kind of in the area, in the services that we are involved with. So as our staff, our supervisees, we help them to help their clients potentially fill in those gaps. And that could be through, just their general working with the clients, but then also it could be, of course, to referrals to appropriate agencies that can do that. So that could be the Aboriginal community-controlled organisations. Like for example, here in Perth, we've got Wanjaning, who are AOD service, an Aboriginal AOD service specifically. We've also got another organisation like Yulgum, which is a counselling service as well. So, we try and help our clients, help our supervisees link their clients to those services. And then also on the outside as well, we've got the 3 points there. So the political determinants, social determinants, and historical determinants. So they're all kind of those external factors that have affected us as First Nations people to be where we are today. So obviously we've got the historical stuff. There's all of those policies that have happened previously, including the Stolen Generation, the White Australia policy, all those kinds of ones. But then we've also got the referendum and stuff in there included, which links in with the political determinants. And lastly is our social determinants. Unfortunately, a lot of social media stuff plays into that these days. And sometimes it can be very hard to read as a Noongar man, some of the comments and stuff that are made out there.
So we'd just like to share a few key considerations that we also advise staff of that we're working with when working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So it's the awareness of local cultural protocols, very important. Click on the next one, Dwayne. Yep. Yep. Relationships and connections. So very important to establish relationships, know the relationships as well. And that's building rapport, trust, and hopefully the connections within the community. Also, their unique and diverse cultural experiences. And the extended family kinship. And we all know how big kinship can get with the Aboriginal community and a lot of other cultures in that space. Kinship's not just the nuclear family of just mum, dad and siblings, extends broader than that. So we like to share what that looks like for Aboriginal people as well.
Thanks, Tara. And just going back to the unique and diverse cultural experiences as well, if we've all seen that lovely IATSIS map of Australia with all the different mobs from across Australia, we've got 300 different groups. Yep, we're all First Nations people, but we're all unique. And the diversity just shows you in that map as well. And here in Noongar country, we've got 14 different groups within ourselves as well. So, I'm Naji Naji, Eastern Wheatbelt. Tara's Minang from down Albany, South-West Coastal Way as well. So yeah, just helps explain that diversity a little bit more. Yeah, as Tara mentioned, taking that time that's necessary to establish trust and build that trust. Because once that's established, you can build those relationships and connections, definitely with our First Nations clients. Because they've had to be wary of services potentially before as well. Part of that is creating those safe spaces. So part of that, sharing with our staff that, look, at times you will have to go out to meet our clients. We can't expect them to come to the office, which, they can be a very clinical looking space at times. But, take them to the park to have a bit of a yarn and stuff like that, see how they're going, how their kids are going. Effective healing, empowerment and leadership. So if we can do all those things above, we are helping our clients heal, empower themselves, and then potentially be, a leader, not just within their little family, but hopefully, they could step out into those wider community leadership type roles as well. And lastly is, understanding what is behind the behaviour, what's driving that behaviour, rather than looking at the behaviour or labelling that behaviour itself as well.
So just throughout the year, we did a bit of an internal audit on how we're tracking in this cultural supervision space. We came up with a few questions to share with supervisees in this space, anonymous survey, the feedback, and some of those questions related to such: did cultural supervision meet your expectations? Do you feel supported by your cultural supervisor? Has cultural supervision provided a reflective space to review my work? Has cultural supervision increased my confidence in working with First Nations people? So just a few questions that were asked, and these are some of the responses we got. Did you want to read a couple, Dwayne? I'm not sure how we're going for time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm comfortable with this space and look forward to the deep reflective conversations and learning. I can identify anything that needs changing, and they are open to learning. Cultural supervision is very useful in our practice as community workers, enables us to work effectively with First Nations people. Cultural supervision has provided me with the space to reinforce the very much needed cultural lens within the program. This staff enjoys the feedback, the honesty and ability to ask questions with honest feedback. And our last one is learning strategies to work with the impacts of colonisation, working alongside First Nations people from their terms of reference, history, cultural or traditional lenses, and not putting on their own narratives on this. Being able to understand and work the two models into their practice, knowledge of the two worlds and how these are navigated as well.
We did get positive from the survey of the staff that participated. Scores were between 85 and 97% with the yes and of understanding, which was quite positive for us. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you both. That was really great to hear your reflections on how your work is going at Centrecare. One of the things, I suppose, it does seem that the people that you surveyed were very affirming of the work that you're doing. I think one thing that's always resonates very strongly for me is that staff and recruitment and retention is very difficult in the sector at any sort of level. So have you had some reflection on how well this has contributed to being able to retain staff or to support staff at particularly challenge or times in their life that they might be being pulled in a number of directions? Very conscious of the fact that, First Nations people are also very busy in their community life and their place in community. So have you got some reflections to offer around how it supports your recruitment and retention strategies too there at Centrecare?
At this time, I think recently we've had lots of, programs coming to an end due to the funding, and then applying for that. So a very challenging space for individuals, having to decide, I guess, how that affects their life and where to go from. With the Aboriginal perspective of, recruiting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff, we have a very good RAP committee. Dwayne and I sit on the cultural working group of the RAP committee with other Aboriginal staff members. We're very supportive of retaining those staff, and I think in the positions that Dwayne and I currently hold as cultural leads, we're able to provide cultural mentoring and support in that cultural supervision space as well.
Oh, that's very good. Thank you. Dwayne, I'm just picking up on something that I heard you say during the presentation, and that was around the health, wellbeing and social framework that you work to. And in terms of the outer circle of the external, I suppose, influences or domains around the social determinants area, you just made a comment about the fact that social media makes things much more complicated these days. And as you being here in Canberra, there's a lot being debated about the role of Facebook and Instagram and so forth, particularly with regards to children. But just wondering whether you might be able to elaborate just a little bit more on, you said it's sometimes difficult to read or to get a real sense of what's going on.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. I think, Tara and I have had to have really good conversations about this before because, say, for example, if we use the recent Welcome to Country by, I can't remember his name, apologies, that did the
footy, the AFL one.
Yeah, for the GWS game, I think it was.
Yeah.
For me personally, I thought it was brilliant because part of that truth-telling component that Tara and I was mentioning about, like, you do hear comments where, it was just made in the 1970s by Ernie Dingo and Uncle Richard and, these kinds of things where it's like, it's almost giving people free rein to tell substantiated truths without any evidence. And unfortunately, there are very openly racist comments as well. And, at times it's just like, what, it's not worth my emotional and mental well-being to read some of those. So you do have breaks.
Yeah, of course. It is. It's like they take on a life of their own, don't they? You have a lot of people who in the past haven't had a voice. They've found this mechanism that they have a voice and they can use it. Well, you have the choice of using it in a positive way or the way of using it in a negative way. And regrettably, a lot of people choose the negative route, don't they?
Yes, unfortunately. And I know Tara and I are very similar because we've talked about this before. We both want to come from an educational type approach.
Yes.
And, we will try I definitely will try my best to try and educate some of those people that made those crazy statements. But then sometimes you just have to learn to go, okay, I'm not getting anywhere. For my own well-being, I'm just going to stop it there.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you very much. I think if anyone has any questions arising that might come up for you after the event, then please get in touch with us here at FRSA. I'm sure that Dwayne and Tara would be more than happy to respond to those. I think we've held on to everybody pretty much for the whole session that had dialed in, Tara and Dwayne, and for me that's always a big mark in terms of how we've gone, is that clearly what you have been sharing with people have resonated with the audience that have joined in today, and hopefully they all take something away from your sharing of your learning in cultural safety and how you support people within your organisation and your community there, and are able to embed that within their own work practices at home base. So thank you both very much again, Tara and Dwayne, for being here today, and to others on the line who have joined us, and very grateful to you both for the opportunity to share your story of your work with a broader network and a broader audience. So thank you very much for today.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, bye for now.